Hi everyone, I'm here with presentation number 2 for our backup presentations. We're going to be talking about your applied dissertation, and this is really going into more detail from the presentation I just did, which was an overview of the research cycle. So what is a dissertation? A dissertation is a major research study. It's something that has not been studied or done before. It advances your field in a unique way. It's limited in scope. Don't try to take on the world. And it's really more designed to be something that it's a project that you're doing to demonstrate your ability to actually create research, which is what differentiates a doctor from any other level of academia, is that you can actually create your own research. You can find your own information. So this is going to be something that you're going to want to be developing that has these kind of characteristics in common. For an EDD, we are doing an applied dissertation. The difference between a basic and an applied dissertation is a basic dissertation is just advancing the field by generating new knowledge. So I want to know why birds fly south for the winter, so I'm going to study that. That's a basic dissertation. You typically see those kind of dissertations in a PhD program, and they're really designed to focus on research questions. I have a question, I want to answer it. An applied dissertation is really the difference between a PhD and an EDD, because an applied dissertation actually generates knowledge and research that can be applied to solve a problem. It's problem focused, not research question focused. So that's an important note to make. You must find a problem that you can solve. The problem needs to be a clear problem in your field. It's not an opinion or a problem that you think exists. Like, I don't like my coworker, so I want to study how to manage coworkers I don't like. No, you can't do that. It should be something that's having a negative impact on your field, and the resolution of it should help in some way. It needs to be clear and succinct, this problem statement. It should be a generalized problem of what's going on in the field, and then a specific problem that you're going to study that's an example of this larger generalized problem. Let's see. So there are a lot of people that are going to be involved in you doing your dissertation. You have your chair, who's going to be your main guide, the main person carrying you through, your committee members, who are going to be assisting the chair, basically giving them, the chair, extra support and making sure that the chair is going in the right direction in the advice they're giving you as the student. But there are also other people that have their fingers in this pie. The Institutional Review Board, the IRB, must approve of your study. They are the ones that protect the school from legal issues arising from the abuse or mistreatment of subjects. It's really an ethical protocol. The dissertation director is going to be the person who makes sure that your dissertation is at the methodological standard of what we're expecting here at CityU, so you're doing a high quality dissertation. The dean also reviews the dissertation, again for the same reason, because this is her responsibility as the dean of the school to be sure that we are producing quality work here, and that when you go out there and you say, I got my doctoral degree from CityU, people are like, wow, that's great. I'm proud. You know, that's something that you should be proud of. You know, we want you to be proud of your alma mater. There'll be a defense in which you will come and present your work to your committee and to two readers who are additional doctoral faculty that will review your work. And then finally, there's dissemination, where you will disseminate your work to people in your field, either through going to a conference, through doing a presentation at an event for your organization, or publishing something in a journal article. These are all options for disseminating your work that you can do. That needs to happen within the year following your defense, and you need to have a plan to make that happen that you present with your defense. There are 3 stages of the dissertation. There's the prospectus, which is presenting your work at a higher level. It's just kind of like snippets of what you're going to do that we want to make sure aligns properly. That we use the doctoral prospectus tool, and that helps us to see things very clearly that A and B and C all are properly aligned. The proposal then is a detailed description of your study. It's basically chapters 1, 2, and 3 of your dissertation. It needs to be filled out completely. It needs to be properly edited, because when you finish chapters 1, 2, and 3, you shouldn't have to rewrite them at the end of your dissertation. You're just going to have to change the tense from future to past. And so that's an important point. You want those to be set. You're not going to do additional review for additional literature review after you have studied your topic. You have to have everything you're going to need in that initial first 3 chapters. And then there's the final dissertation. This is the final product, all 5 chapters, complete, done, edited, proper formatting, proper styles, APA, all the kit and caboodle. This is what is going to be turned in. This is ultimately what's going to be submitted to ProQuest so that it will be published and available for other people to see. Again, the organization of a dissertation is 5 chapters. You have your introduction, you have your literature review, you have your methodology, you have your presentation of your findings, and then you have your analysis of your findings, or your discussion section. The introduction is basically going to be a mini review of what's happening. It's going to tell the background, your problem statement, your research questions, a little lit review background, and a little preview of the methodology. So it's kind of like a little mini chapters 1 through 3. Then you're going to do your full literature review, and then you're going to do your full methodology. And both of those, within and of themselves, each could be 20 to 30 to 40 pages, depending on how much you have to say. Typically, the methodology isn't as long as the literature review. That's going to be the longest chapter that you're going to do. Chapter 4 then is where you present your findings. This is the voice of your participants. This is just a presentation of the raw data. No interpretation, just a presentation of the data. And you're going to do that around the themes that you've discovered in your work. Then in Chapter 5, you're going to analyze these findings, and you're going to connect what you found in Chapter 4 to your literature review from Chapter 2, and you're going to connect these things together and give us a discussion of what you found and how it answered your research questions. Chapter 5 is organized by your research questions. It's where you show us what you found, what you've answered. You show us the solution to your problem. The prospectus tool really starts from your problem statement and then moves out. You pull in background research, you present that. You pull in theory that you're going to be using, you present that. You have your methodology, you have your research questions. All of these come from the problem statement. It is either going to have to show a link to business or a link to leadership, depending if you're a DBA or an EDD. It's supported by a high-level description of literature and methods, and it will be reviewed by your chair and the dissertation director. The proposal then is a full chapters 1 through 3, like I said. It's also reviewed by the chair, the committee members, the dissertation director, and then when that's all done and approved, then you go to IRB and get IRB approval so that you can then start your study. Once you get that IRB approval, then you can start collecting data, and that data is what you use to produce chapters 4 and 5. The final dissertation is reviewed by the chair, committee members, dissertation director, dean, and also that's it. And you can only do your defense and dissemination once you have approval from the dean. The classes are RSR 694A through E. You will be assigned your chair before you start A, and you will not get your committee until you finish your prospectus tool. That's so that we can make sure your committee is properly aligned with the work that you're doing. If, for perchance, while you're doing the 694A through E cycle, if you end up running out of time, like it's taken you longer than a year and a half, then you have to be registered in RESR 99 classes, not 699, but actually 99. Those 99 classes are going to be the ones that you basically have to pay for $1,000 each time until you finish your dissertation. You don't want to get to that point. They're not covered by financial aid. They're outside the program. They're unnecessary for you to be taking those classes. It's just because you didn't finish in time. And so you've got to make sure you get finished in time so you don't get in a position where you're taking extra classes you don't need. But it is required. You cannot be not enrolled and working on a dissertation. That is not allowed. It's not allowed at any university, so it's not just us. Obviously, you know the research sequence, 6, 17, 19, 21, 23, and 25. Those all have to be completed, and during those times you may be working on some of the ideas that you will be putting into your dissertation. However, you don't have to be. You might not have it nailed down until you get into a conversation with your chair during the beginning of the dissertation. My advice is to try to look at different options and do the research, do class assignments around your topic area so that you can see, has it been studied before? Is this something that's a real problem in the field? You can start developing that knowledge so that when you get to your dissertation, you have something that you can already pull from and you're not starting from scratch. Take advantage of the opportunity in these research classes to explore, test different ideas. You can write a different paper on a different thing. It doesn't have to be your final dissertation. You're not locked in. But it is true that the dissertation is the place that you can reuse any work from the program. So if you have some literature that you found during your 625 literature review class that you want to bring into your lit review for your dissertation, you can do that. It's probably going to need to be rewritten. It may not be at the standard your chair is looking for. So please don't come up to your chair and say, I got an A on this paper in 625. I shouldn't have to make any changes. No, that is not true. Dissertation is a new document. Your literature review must flow and tell a story, and it must be connected to your problem statement. If it's not, then you're going to need to redo it, or you're going to need to add additional things. So just keep that in mind. It's not a clear-cut A equals B kind of situation. Oops. 1 minute. So it's important that you understand during the dissertation process that this is iterative. This is something that you're going to be doing over and over again. You're going to take a section out, and then 6 months later, you may need to add that section back in again. This is why you want to keep all the copies of your drafts. Make a new draft every time you're sending it to your chair so that you have back copies if something has to be put back in again. And it will. There are going to be things that your chair thinks you need to remove because it doesn't make sense with what you're currently doing. Then later on, you may change your tenor, that you may add something, you may make some kind of change, and the chair is like, wait a minute, I think you need to add that back again. We need to have a part about this. And you're like, okay, I'm going to go get it and add it back. It's as simple as that. Don't be arguing with the chair and saying, oh, but you said to remove it just last month. Well, yeah, but now I'm saying put it back in, so do it. That's the way you need to be thinking about this. You're building this process with your chair. You don't want to be sitting there arguing over minor things because ultimately you're not going to win, and it's going to increase the time that you're spending in the dissertation process. We want this to be a good collaborative experience, but it's important that you recognize that you are not an expert in this, and that's what your chair is helping you to become. And that's what the committee is helping you to become. That's why they're giving you so much feedback. You must make any edits that your chair, committee members, and the dissertation director require. The chair is not your editor. You need to make sure that your work is edited well. The final dissertation will need to be edited by a professional editor to make sure that your APA is correct, to make sure that you don't have any mistakes, to make sure that you're not using anthropomorphism and saying the study will collect data on. No, studies can't collect data. Scholarly writing. Remember, we don't care about your opinion. I don't want to hear about what you think about it. I want to know what research says about it, and then I want to know what your participants said about it, but I never want to know what you said about it. That doesn't mean you don't have a voice. Your voice is the actual things you're presenting. It is the way you did your study. It is your participants' responses that you collected. You add all these things together to make your point, but you do not just come out and say, I think, or I feel, or this kind of thing. That's not what's matter. APA 6th edition, remember your work needs to be original, don't copy, don't plagiarize, you will be caught, and then you've lost your doctoral degree, and that would be horrible. So here's a few minor challenges that we've often had with doctoral students from other places. We've done these challenges. We compiled this list of the things that we've seen, not necessarily in CityU doctoral students, but some of them came from CityU doctoral students, but mostly it's been from like our experience with doctoral students over time. These are some of the challenges that we see, basically. Writing, that's one of the bigger challenges. Quality, APA, clarity, organization, synthesis, evaluation. We don't want to see a list of citations. Your literature review should not be one long list of citation after citation. There needs to be synthesis. You need to be evaluating the sources. You need to be setting up your paragraphs with transitional sentences, and you need to have your voice in there as a guide to the research that you're presenting. Not an opinion, but a guide. And that's one of the things that we have the biggest problem with initially is students aren't clear, and it becomes impossible to read their work because it's just hard to see. With the problem statement, one of the issues we see is it's not a problem, it's a research question. So nobody knows why special education students don't make higher grades in math. So I want to learn why special education students aren't making the grades they should. Well, that's great. If no one studied it, that's certainly something a PhD could come in and study, but that's not what an applied dissertation is. It's not what you're going to do with a DBA. It's not what you're going to do with an EDD. You need to apply it. You need to look for a problem in the field that you can solve. You could look at that situation and think there's a problem with the math scores of students in special ed, and you can then study a way to solve that problem or find someone who has solved the problem in their classroom and then study how they did that so that you could then present this problem into your field. Gigantic. That is one of the biggest things. Students want to study so much. They want to be able to answer all of these questions, and you need to keep the scope limited to a workable dissertation, but you don't want to be too limited so that you're studying one classroom and one teacher and the way they did something. Nobody is going to think of that as a dissertation material. Even though it may be a valid point and an interesting study, that would be something you do after your dissertation. On that point, studying something that nobody cares about except you, or you and a few other people, is also something you're not going to do in your dissertation. The dissertation needs to be a major contribution to the field. You can't do something that's been done before. You can't utilize data that already exists. If you're going to use a data set that already exists, you need to come up with something new from that data. You cannot be basically reporting what has already been reported when that data was presented. You have to be able to look at it in a new, fresh way, bring in some new information that then reimagines that data. Students often really have a hard time getting their mind around the idea of a problem. What is the problem? They'll come in and say something like, let's go to our previous example, students in special education aren't scoring high on math exams. That's a problem. And then immediately, when I hear that, I think of, why is that a problem? So these students aren't doing well. Why is that a problem? And so you come back and you say, well, it's a problem because the parents are unhappy. Okay, well, why is the parents being unhappy a problem? You see where I'm going with this. You want to get down to the core real issue that is affecting the school or is affecting the problem that you're looking at. What's the real core here? Are we possibly losing government funding? Is the school system in crisis? You know, are there is there some kind of quality of life issue that's going on here, that students aren't getting treated fairly or some other thing like that? Then you can look at those issues and boil down to what the real problem is that you're looking at, and not just the simple overview of the bigger issue here and not really an actual problem. And then, of course, students think their chair is the editor. They want the chair to fix all of their grammar. They want the chair to fix. A chair is going to say something like, in chapter 2, you use the word really too many times. Get rid of it. You know, and you're going to need to go through and you're going to need to do that. Or they're going to say, you have anthropomorphisms in chapter 3. You need to remove those. And you're going to need to do that. They're not going to remove them for you. And they're certainly not going to line by line show you every error in your paper. Ultimately, that's why you're going to need to have an editor, because an editor will help you with that. Another issue that we see a lot with doctoral students is they get their minds on a topic and they won't let it go, even if it's not appropriate. It's what they want to study. Typically, this is when you see people wanting to do activism. You know, I'm going to show my boss that they're wrong. I know a better way of doing this, and I'm going to prove it with my dissertation. People don't understand why this is really a problem, and I want to show them it is a problem. Those kind of things typically do not make good dissertation topics. Number one, you're biased. And number two, you're too passionate about the topic. If you're too passionate about the topic, you're going to have a very hard time really doing the work, because you're going to be so invested in it that any criticism you get is going to set you off, and that's not going to work. Students will also just tend to choose something that's not dissertation worthy. It's too small of a scope, or the exact opposite. They pick a big giant problem that overwhelms them and they don't know where to start. Again, this is something we see every day as faculty. Students don't listen to the feedback and they don't make the changes that are required. Again, this is not a paper that you're turning in and getting a grade. This is your dissertation. It's got to be perfect when it's finished. So you can't ignore the feedback you're getting. Your chair will keep sending you your work back and saying, you still haven't done what I asked you to do. In that situation, you're just delaying yourself, because the chair gets 2 weeks every time you resubmit. So you're just pushing your timeline back and pushing it back and pushing it back. Do not turn something in and expect your chair to do it over the weekend. It's not going to happen. And then the other part is trying to get your chair to help you find literature or help you write a section of your dissertation. Again, it's not the chair isn't the writer, you're the writer. The chair is your coach to help you get to that next level. Unrealistic expectations, trying to cut corners, plagiarism, students wanting to change their chairs because they want to get an easier chair that's going to go with what they want. All of these things, they just delay you. They just create unnecessary drama, and we want to get rid of those completely. The idea is that you don't end up like the after dissertation owl. You want to look like the before dissertation owl. You want this to be the best experience it can be. Is it going to be problematic? Yes. Are there going to be times you want to strangle someone? Yes. It is hard. Doing a dissertation is not an easy process, but with guidance and with focus, you can get through it fairly unfazed. You'll be phased a little, but fairly unfazed. That's your goal, is to be fairly unfazed. But remember, you're not alone. You've got the librarians, you've got program faculty, you have your chair. There are people around you that will be able to help you. And again, you're also going to be doing further residencies, and those residencies are going to help you with developing your problem statement and keeping you on track. That's it for this presentation. If you have any questions, please email your professor from the class, comment in the discussion board, present those questions so that they can get answered.